Marcus Chen had been having a perfectly ordinary Tuesday when the aliens abducted him. One moment he was walking home from his job at the Animal Rehabilitation Center in Colorado. The next he was waking up in what looked like a holding cell made of some kind of translucent metal that hummed with energy. The Zephyrians, as he would later learn they were called, stood nearly 8 feet tall with elongated limbs and skin that shifted between purple and blue depending on their mood. Their leader, someone called Vextal, had explained the situation to Marcus through a universal translator that made everyone sound like they had a slight echo. Human specimen, Vextal had said, his skin cycling to a pleased orange. You have been selected for our grand arena. It is a great honor. Marcus had tried to explain that he hadn't volunteered for any arena, thank you very much, but the aliens seemed to think his protests were just pre-battle nerves. They kept patting him on the head with their 3-fingered hands and making what he assumed were encouraging noises. The grand arena turned out to be exactly what it sounded like. A massive stadium that could easily hold 100,000 spectators, all of them various alien species that Marcus couldn't begin to identify. The arena floor was covered in what looked like red sand, though it sparkled in the artificial lighting in a way that suggested it wasn't entirely natural. The human will face the Drachmori, announced the arena's commentator, whose voice boomed across the stadium in at least 12 different languages. These magnificent predators have never been defeated in single combat. Today, we shall see how the legendary human aggression fares against true apex predators. Marcus stood in the center of the arena, wearing nothing but his work clothes and the growing certainty that he was about to die. The crowd was cheering, a sound like 1,000 different musical instruments all playing different songs at once. Alien vendors were moving through the stands, selling what he hoped were snacks and not pieces of previous arena victims. The gates across from him began to grind open, and Marcus felt his stomach drop. Whatever was coming through those gates was big enough that the ground was actually vibrating with each footstep. The first Drachmor emerged into the sunlight, and Marcus understood immediately why they'd never been defeated. It stood 15 feet tall at the shoulder, covered in scales that looked like they could deflect artillery. Its head was distinctly dragon-like, with intelligent yellow eyes and teeth the size of railroad spikes, but it moved on 4 legs like a massive lizard, with claws that left gouges in the arena floor. Then the second one emerged. And the third. Oh, come on, Marcus muttered to himself. 3 of them? That's just unfair. The crowd's cheering reached a fever pitch as the 3 Drachmori spread out, clearly intending to surround him. Marcus could see the intelligence in their eyes as they coordinated their approach. These weren't mindless beasts. They were apex predators with the cunning to match their physical prowess. Marcus had worked with dangerous animals his entire adult life. Bears, mountain lions, wolves, even a few exotic rescues that probably shouldn't have been kept as pets in the first place. The first rule of dealing with a predator was never to show fear. The second rule was to establish dominance if possible. The third rule, which his supervisor had drilled into him after a particularly memorable incident with a rescued tiger, was that sometimes you had to get creative. The largest of the 3 Drachmori, its scales a deep emerald green, took a step forward and let out a roar that made Marcus's bones vibrate. The sound was like a jet engine mixed with a freight train, and he could feel it in his chest cavity. Instead of backing away or showing fear, Marcus did something that surprised everyone in the stadium, including himself. He roared back. It wasn't much of a roar by Drachmor standards. Humans weren't really built for intimidating vocalizations, but Marcus put everything he had into it, channeling every frustrating day at work, every rude customer, every time he'd had to clean up after animals that were bigger and stronger than him, but still needed his help. The Drachmori actually paused. The crowd fell silent for a moment, then erupted in what Marcus assumed was alien laughter. But the Drachmori weren't laughing. They were studying him with those intelligent yellow eyes, heads tilted slightly as if trying to figure out what exactly they were dealing with. Marcus took a step forward, then another. The rational part of his mind was screaming that this was suicide, but his instincts were telling him something different. These weren't just predators, they were intelligent creatures, and intelligence could be reasoned with. "Easy there," he said in the calm, steady voice he used with frightened animals. "Nobody needs to get hurt here." The emerald drachmor lowered its massive head until it was at Marcus's eye level, close enough that he could feel its breath on his face. It smelled like sulfur and ozone, with an underlying scent that reminded him oddly of the reptile house at the zoo. Marcus slowly raised his hand, palm out, and took another step closer. The crowd was dead silent now. Even the commentator had stopped talking. "That's right," Marcus continued in that same calm voice. "Just checking me out, aren't you? Trying to figure out what I am." The drachmor's pupils dilated slightly, and Marcus realized with a start that it was actually listening to him, not just hearing the sounds he was making, but actually paying attention to his tone and body language. He'd seen this behavior before, in the big cats at the rescue center, the moment when a wild animal stopped seeing you as either prey or threat and started seeing you as something else entirely, something that might be reasoned with. "You're not really killers, are you?" Marcus said, taking another small step. "You're performers. This is all just a show." The emerald drachmor made a sound that wasn't quite a growl, more like a questioning rumble. Its two companions moved closer, flanking their leader but not in an attack formation. They were curious now, not hunting. Marcus could hear the crowd starting to mutter in their various alien languages. This clearly wasn't going the way anyone had expected. "The thing is," Marcus continued, now close enough to touch the emerald drachmor's snout if he wanted to, "I work with animals for a living, back on my world, and I've learned that the most dangerous-looking creatures are often the most misunderstood." He slowly extended his hand toward the massive creature's face. The crowd gasped in unison. In the VIP section, he could see Vexatal leaning forward in what looked like shock. The drachmor's eyes focused on his hand, then flicked back to his face. For a moment that lasted forever, predator and human stared at each other. Then the great creature lowered its head and gently touched its snout to Marcus's palm. The crowd exploded. Not in cheers or laughter this time, but in what sounded like genuine amazement. Marcus heard the commentator frantically trying to describe what was happening, his voice jumping between languages as if he couldn't find adequate words in any single tongue. The other two drachmori approached more boldly now, and Marcus found himself surrounded by three massive predators who were acting more like curious puppies than deadly arena monsters. The second one, with scales that shifted from blue to silver, actually lay down in front of him in what was unmistakably a submissive posture. "Well, I'll be damned," Marcus murmured, scratching behind what he hoped was an ear on the emerald drachmor. The creature made a sound like a gigantic cat, purring. The third drachmor, smaller than the others but with scales that seemed to absorb light, approached from his left side and gently bumped against his shoulder with its massive head. Marcus reached up to pat its snout, marveling at how warm the scales were. "You guys are just big softies, aren't you?" he said with a grin. "Probably been stuck in cages your whole lives, forced to put on shows for tourists." The emerald drachmor made another questioning sound, and Marcus could swear he saw intelligence and sadness in those yellow eyes. "Yeah, I know the feeling," he said quietly. "People see the teeth and claws and assume you're monsters. But you're not, are you? You're just trying to survive in a world that doesn't understand you." Up in the stands, the alien crowd was in chaos. Some were cheering, others seemed to be arguing, and a few appeared to be demanding their money back. Marcus could see Vextal in heated discussion with several other Zephyrians, their skin colors cycling through the entire spectrum as they gestured wildly. The arena commentator was still trying to make sense of what was happening. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications," he announced, "this is unprecedented in the history of the Grand Arena. The human has not only survived contact with the Drachmori, but appears to have befriended them? Marcus looked up at the crowd surrounding the arena, then back at the three magnificent creatures who were now all trying to get his attention at once. The smallest one had actually rolled over onto its back, like a dog wanting belly rubs. "You know what the real problem is here?" Marcus called out, loud enough for his voice to carry across the arena. "You people don't understand the first thing about these creatures. You think they're just mindless killers, but they're not. They're intelligent, social beings who've been forced into this situation." He gestured to the three Drachmori, who were watching the crowd with what looked suspiciously like disdain. "These aren't monsters," Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. "They're prisoners, and from what I can see, they're as tired of this whole arena business as I am." The Emerald Drachmor lifted its massive head and let out another roar, but this time it wasn't directed at Marcus. It was looking straight up at the VIP section where the arena's organizers sat. The other two joined in, creating a sound that shook dust from the stadium's upper levels. The crowd fell silent again, but this time it felt different. The aliens weren't laughing anymore. They were listening. Marcus felt a strange surge of confidence. He'd spent his entire career advocating for misunderstood animals, usually to crowds of bureaucrats and politicians who saw conservation as an inconvenience. But this audience seemed genuinely interested in what he had to say. "On my world," he called out, "we've learned that the most dangerous predators become the most loyal companions when treated with respect and understanding. These Drachmori don't want to fight. They want to live." The blue-silver Drachmor stood up and moved to Marcus's right side, positioning itself protectively between him and one section of the crowd that seemed particularly agitated. The dark-scaled one did the same on his left. "And apparently," Marcus added with a grin, "they've decided I'm worth protecting." In the VIP section, Vextal was frantically speaking into what looked like a communication device. Other arena officials were gathering around him, their skin colors cycling through patterns that Marcus was beginning to recognize as extreme agitation. The commentator's voice crackled over the arena's speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, we appear to have a developing situation. Arena security is requesting that all spectators remain in their seats while officials determine the proper protocol for this unusual outcome." Marcus looked around at his three new companions, who were all watching the crowd with alert intelligence. The Emerald one leaned down and made a soft rumbling sound near his ear. "Yeah, I think we've made our point," Marcus agreed. "The question is, what happens now?" As if in answer to his question, a new set of gates began opening around the arena's perimeter. But instead of more creatures being released, armed guards in what looked like high-tech riot gear began pouring onto the sand. The three Drachmori immediately moved into a defensive formation around Marcus, their earlier playfulness replaced by obvious alertness. The Emerald leader's scales seemed to darken, and all three creatures lowered their heads in what Marcus recognized as a threat display. "Easy," Marcus said quickly, placing his hands on the nearest Drachmor's flank. "Let's not escalate this." But the guards were already raising weapons that hummed with the same energy as Marcus's former cell. Stun weapons, most likely, but probably powerful enough to drop even a Drachmor. The crowd was on its feet now, and Marcus could hear the alien equivalent of shouting from every direction. Some seemed to be cheering for the guards, others for the Drachmori, and a few appeared to be chanting his name. "Well," Marcus said to his companions, "looks like we've started something. The question is, are you three up for making a statement?" The Emerald Drachmor looked down at him, and Marcus could swear he saw understanding in those ancient yellow eyes. Then the great creature lifted its head and let out a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the arena. The other two joined in, and the sound was like nothing Marcus had ever heard. It wasn't just noise, it was a declaration, a refusal to be caged, controlled, or forced to perform for the entertainment of others. And standing in the center of three of the most powerful predators in the galaxy, Marcus Chen from Colorado found himself grinning like an idiot. "All right then," he said as the guards began closing in. "Let's show them what humans and dragons can do when they work together." The arena guards advanced in formation, their energy weapons crackling with barely contained power. Marcus counted at least 20 of them, all wearing armor that looked like it could stop a tank round. But as he watched the three Drachmori position themselves protectively around him, he realized that armor might not be enough. "Hold!" The voice boomed across the arena from the VIP section. Vextal was standing now, his skin cycling through rapid patterns of blue and purple. "Do not engage the specimens!" The guards froze, though they kept their weapons trained on the group. Marcus could feel the tension radiating from the Drachmori. The Emerald leader's muscles were coiled like springs, ready to launch into action at the first sign of aggression. "Specimens?" Marcus called up to the VIP section, his voice carrying clearly across the suddenly quiet arena. "Is that what you call us? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've got three highly intelligent beings who've been forced into slavery for your entertainment." A ripple of what might have been uncomfortable murmuring spread through the crowd. Marcus noticed that several sections of aliens were now looking more thoughtful than excited. Vextal descended from the VIP section, flanked by two other Zephyrians whose skin patterns Marcus hadn't seen before. As they approached the arena floor, a transparent force field shimmered into existence between them and the guards, creating a safe corridor. "Human Marcus," Vextal said as he reached the edge of the sand. "You have created a most unprecedented situation. The Drachmori have never shown such behavior toward any contestant." "That's because your previous contestants were probably trying to fight them," Marcus replied. "I'm an animal behavioral specialist. These creatures aren't natural killers. They're performers who've been conditioned to act aggressive for your shows." The blue-silver Drachmor made a low sound that somehow managed to convey agreement. It stepped forward slightly, positioning itself between Marcus and Vextal, but not in an obviously threatening way. "You speak as if you understand them," one of Vextal's companions said. This one was taller and thinner than the others, with skin that remained a steady, deep purple. "But they are not from your world. How could you possibly communicate with alien predators?" Marcus reached up and scratched the dark-scaled Drachmor behind what he'd determined was definitely an ear. The creature leaned into the contact, making that purring sound again. "Body language is universal," Marcus explained. "Fear, aggression, curiosity, submission. These guys are showing classic signs of intelligent creatures who've been kept in captivity for too long. They're not happy about it, but they've learned to adapt to survive." He gestured to the Emerald leader, who was watching the conversation with obvious interest. "Look at how he's positioned himself. He's not preparing to attack. He's protecting his pack and trying to assess whether you're a threat. That's not mindless aggression. That's intelligent social behavior." The third Zephyrian, whose skin was shifting between silver and gold, stepped forward. "I am Dr. Kethra, the arena's xenobiologist. Your assessment is intriguing. But the Drachmori have been bred specifically for combat effectiveness. They are engineered predators." "Engineered?" Marcus felt a cold anger building in his chest. "You mean these are artificial creatures? Created for this arena?" "Not artificial," Dr. Kethra clarified quickly, apparently sensing the change in Marcus's tone. "Enhanced. Their base species is from the Drachmor homeworld, but we have improved their physical capabilities for arena performance." The Emerald Drachmor's head swung toward Dr. Kethra, and Marcus saw something that made his blood run cold. The creature understood. It knew exactly what the alien scientist was saying. "You took an intelligent species," Marcus said, his voice growing dangerously quiet, and you genetically modified them to be better killers for your entertainment. The three Drachmori were all watching the aliens now, and Marcus could feel the change in their body language. The playful curiosity was gone, replaced by something much more focused and angry. Enhanced specimens require enhanced capabilities, Vextal said, apparently not noticing the shift in mood. The arena demands spectacle. Mere wild creatures would not provide adequate entertainment value. Entertainment value, Marcus repeated. Right. He turned to face the crowd, spreading his arms wide. Is that what you call this? He shouted. Entertainment? You've taken three intelligent beings, modified their bodies against their will, and forced them to fight for your amusement. Where I come from, we have a word for that. The arena had gone completely silent. Even the guards had lowered their weapons slightly, apparently caught up in what was happening. We call it slavery, Marcus continued, and it's wrong. The Emerald Drachmor moved to stand directly beside him, its massive form casting a shadow over the Zephyrian delegation. The creature's yellow eyes were fixed on Vextal with an intensity that made the alien administrator step back involuntarily. Furthermore, Marcus said, gaining confidence, I don't think your enhanced specimens are as controllable as you think they are. These three have been waiting for someone to treat them like the intelligent beings they are. And now that they know it's possible, he trailed off as all three Drachmori simultaneously turned to look at the arena walls. Marcus followed their gaze and realized what they were looking at. The holding areas, where other creatures were kept. Oh, he said softly. There are more of you, aren't there? The blue-silver Drachmor made a sound that was unmistakably confirmation. Then it lifted its head and let out a long, warbling call that echoed off the arena walls. From somewhere in the depths of the stadium came an answering call, then another, and another. Dr. Kethra was frantically checking a device on her wrist. Impossible, she muttered. The containment fields are still active. They cannot be communicating through the barriers. Maybe your barriers don't block everything, Marcus suggested. Maybe they've been talking to each other all along and you just never bothered to listen. More calls were echoing from the holding areas now. A complex symphony of sounds that spoke of intelligence and coordination. The crowd was getting restless, with many aliens looking toward the exits. Vextal was speaking rapidly into his communication device, his skin flashing through patterns that Marcus was pretty sure meant panic. Human Marcus, he said, turning back to the group, you must help us restore order. The other specimens are becoming agitated. If they breach containment, then maybe you should have thought about that before you turned intelligent beings into gladiators, Marcus replied. The Emerald Drachmor was making soft rumbling sounds, and Marcus realized it was trying to communicate something specific to him. He listened carefully, noting the patterns in the sounds. You're trying to tell me something about the others, he said. About how many there are. The creature nodded, an unmistakably human gesture that made Dr. Kethra's equipment beep frantically. Fascinating, she muttered. They're adapting their communication methods in real time, learning to interface with human behavioral patterns. They're learning because they're intelligent, Marcus said firmly, and they want to be understood. The calling from the holding areas was getting louder and more organized. Marcus could hear the guards speaking into their own communication devices, reporting what sounded like containment breaches. How many? Marcus asked the Emerald Drachmor. The creature held up one massive claw, extending different numbers of talons in a sequence. Marcus watched carefully, translating. 53, he said finally. There are 53 more of them down there. The color drained from Vextal's face, turning his skin an alarming shade of pale gray. That's impossible, Dr. Kethra protested. The total Drachmori population in our facilities is classified information. How could it possibly know? Because they talk to each other, Marcus said. They share information. They plan, just like any other intelligent species would. The first explosion came from somewhere beneath the arena floor. The ground shook, and several sections of the crowd stands swayed visibly. Emergency klaxons began wailing, and the crowd started moving toward the exits en masse. "The containment levels," Vextal said, his voice barely audible over the noise. "They've breached the containment levels." Marcus felt the Emerald Drakmore's massive head settle gently on his shoulder. A gesture of trust and companionship that he found deeply moving. "They're not rioting," he realized. "They're escaping, and they wanted us to distract you while they did it." The three Drakmori around him were definitely smiling now, showing teeth that could have torn him apart, but were instead being displayed in what was obviously satisfaction. "You planned this," Marcus said with growing admiration. "You three have been planning this escape for who knows how long, and you were just waiting for the right moment." The blue-silver Drakmore made a sound that was definitely confirmation, while the dark-scaled one actually managed to look pleased with itself. Another explosion. Closer this time. Through the arena floor, Marcus could see the bright flashes of energy weapons being fired in rapid succession. "Your guards are fighting a losing battle," Marcus told Vextal. 53 enhanced predators who've been planning their escape and know the facility layout better than anyone. How do you think that's going to end?" Vextal was now frantically speaking into his communicator in what sounded like multiple languages simultaneously. The other arena officials were backing away from the group, their skin patterns cycling through every color Marcus had seen, and several he hadn't. "There," the Emerald Drakmore said. Marcus stared at the creature in shock. The word had been perfectly clear, spoken in slightly accented English. "You can talk," he said. "You can actually talk." "Learning," the Drakmore replied, its voice deep and resonant. "Listening, understanding." Dr. Kethra's equipment was now making continuous alarm sounds. "Unprecedented neurological adaptation," she said, apparently too fascinated to be properly afraid. "They're developing language centers in real time." "Not developing," the blue-silver Drakmore said, its voice higher and smoother than its companions. "Always had. You never listened." "We tried to speak," the dark-scaled one added, its voice carrying an undertone of sadness. "You only wanted roars." Marcus felt tears forming in his eyes. These magnificent beings had been trying to communicate for who knows how long, and their captors had simply ignored them because it was more convenient to see them as mindless beasts. "I'm sorry," he said simply. "I'm sorry this happened to you." "Not your fault," the Emerald leader replied. "You are first to see us as people." The arena around them was now in complete chaos. The crowd had mostly evacuated, but the sounds of battle were getting closer. Energy blasts were lighting up the holding area entrances, and Marcus could hear the distinctive roars of very angry Drakmori echoing through the facility. "What happens now?" Marcus asked his three companions. "Now we go home," the Emerald leader said simply. "All of us." "Your ship," the blue-silver one added, looking directly at Marcus. "They took you from your home, too." Marcus realized they were right. Somewhere in this facility was the ship that had brought him here, and if the Drakmori were planning to escape— "You're offering to take me with you," he said. "Pack protects pack," the dark-scaled one said firmly. "You are pack now." The main entrance to the holding areas exploded outward in a shower of sparks and debris. Through the smoke, Marcus could see shapes moving, large shapes with scales and claws and very bright yellow eyes. The first escaped Drakmore emerged into the arena, looked around, and immediately spotted Marcus's group. It let out a triumphant roar and charged across the sand. "Friend!" the Emerald leader called out as the newcomer approached. "Safe friend!" The escaped Drakmore slowed its approach, studying Marcus with obvious curiosity. This one was smaller than his three companions, but moved with a fluid grace that spoke of perfect predatory conditioning. Human friend helped. the blue-silver one explained. Human friend spoke for us. The newcomer tilted its head, then made a sound that Marcus was learning to recognize as a Drachmore expression of gratitude. More Drachmori were emerging from the holding areas now, and Marcus realized he was about to meet a lot more of these incredible creatures. The question was whether the arena's security forces would let any of them live long enough to escape. "We need to move," he said. "Your security forces are going to bring in heavy weapons soon." "Already planned," the Emerald leader assured him. "Ship is prepared. Freedom is close." As if to emphasize the point, another section of the arena floor exploded upward, revealing what looked like a maintenance tunnel. Several more Drachmori emerged, followed by the distinctive sound of approaching spacecraft engines. "Your ship?" Marcus asked. "Our ship now," the dark-scaled one replied, with what might have been a grin. "We learned much during captivity, including how to fly." Marcus looked around at the growing crowd of escaped Drachmori, all of whom seemed remarkably organized and purposeful for creatures who were supposedly mindless predators. "How long have you been planning this?" he asked. "Since first day," the Emerald leader replied. "We are patient people. We waited for right moment." "And I was the right moment?" "You were catalyst," the blue-silver one explained. "Someone who would listen, someone who would understand." The sound of approaching military aircraft was getting louder now. Whatever escape plan the Drachmori had, they needed to execute it soon. "Are you ready to leave your world behind, human friend?" the Emerald leader asked. Marcus looked around at the ruins of the arena, thought about his quiet life in Colorado, and then looked at the magnificent beings who were offering him a place among them. "Call me Marcus," he said, "and yes, I think I'm ready for an adventure." The Drachmori ship rose from beneath the arena like a metal dragon awakening from slumber. It was massive, easily 300 feet long, with a hull that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. As it breached the arena floor, Marcus could see that it wasn't designed by any species he'd encountered so far. The aesthetics were distinctly organic, with curves and flowing lines that suggested it had been grown rather than built. "Beautiful, isn't she?" the Emerald leader said, pride evident in his voice. "Took us 7 years to steal enough components to repair her." 7 years? Marcus stared at the ship in amazement. "You've been planning this escape for 7 years?" "We are patient people," the blue-silver Drachmore replied. "And we have long memories." The ship's cargo bay doors were opening, revealing an interior that glowed with soft bioluminescent lighting. Other Drachmori were already boarding, moving with practiced efficiency that spoke of careful preparation. "Marcus!" Vextal's voice cut through the noise of the escape. The Zephyrian administrator was approaching under heavy guard, his skin cycling through patterns that Marcus now recognized as desperate pleading. "You must help us stop this. The Drachmori are valuable assets. The economic impact of losing them will be catastrophic." "Assets," Marcus repeated, feeling his anger flare again. "You still don't get it, do you? These aren't your property. They never were." The dark-scaled Drachmore moved to intercept Vextal's approach, not threateningly, but firmly. "No more cages," it said simply. "No more shows. No more slavery." "But the contracts," Vextal protested. "The breeding programs. We invested billions in genetic enhancement. You cannot simply—" "Watch us," the Emerald leader interrupted. His voice had taken on a tone that made the guards step back involuntarily. "We remember every day in your cells, every forced fight, every time you treated us like animals instead of people. We remember everything." More Drachmori were emerging from the ship now, but these weren't escaped prisoners. These were crew members, Marcus realized, wearing what looked like some kind of organic armor that complemented their natural scales. They moved with military precision, taking defensive positions around the ship's perimeter. "There are more of you," Marcus said with growing wonder. "More who were never captured." "Free clans," the blue-silver Drakmor confirmed. "They have been searching for us. Now they have found us." One of the ship's crew members approached their group, this one larger than even the Emerald Leader, with scales that seemed to contain their own internal light. When it spoke, its voice carried the authority of command. "Brother Leader," it said to Marcus's companion, "the hunt pack is complete?" "Complete and more," the Emerald Leader replied. "We have gained a wise friend from the small world humans." The newcomer studied Marcus with intelligent golden eyes. "Ah, the legend makers. We have heard the stories of your species. Welcome aboard, small friend." "Legends?" Marcus asked, as they began moving toward the ship. Around them, the last of the escaped Drakmori were boarding while the crew maintained their defensive perimeter. "Human stories spread far through the galaxy," the dark-scaled Drakmor explained. "Tales of the small, fierce ones who befriend all creatures. The pack builders who turn enemies into allies. Stories of humans are told on many worlds," the ship's commander added. "Always the same theme. Humans who find ways to understand what others cannot, who build bridges between species that have never spoken before." Marcus felt a strange mixture of pride and responsibility. "We're not that special. We just try to listen." "Exactly," the Emerald Leader said, with what was definitely a smile. "You try to listen. Most species speak only to their own kind. Humans speak to everyone." The boarding ramp was retracting now, and Marcus could feel the ship's engines building power. Through the transparent sections of the hull, he could see Zephyrian military vessels approaching in the distance. "Are we going to fight them?" Marcus asked as they settled into what appeared to be the ship's common area. "No need," the commander replied. "They cannot catch us, and they know it. This ship was built for freedom." "Built by who?" Marcus was fascinated by the organic architecture surrounding them. Everything seemed alive, from the walls that pulsed gently with bioluminescent patterns to the floors that adjusted their firmness based on who was walking on them. "By us," the blue-silver Drakmor said. "Before the Great Capture, when our people were still whole." The ship lifted smoothly from the arena, and through the viewing ports Marcus could see the facility falling away below them. The Zephyrian military vessels were pursuing, but their movements seemed sluggish compared to the flowing grace of the Drakmori ship. "Tell me about your people," Marcus said, as they cleared the atmosphere. "The real story, not what the arena owners think they know." The Emerald Leader settled beside him, and Marcus was still amazed by how comfortable these massive predators made him feel. "We are the Drakmori Confederation. We were explorers, scientists, artists. We traveled between stars to learn and share knowledge." "Artists." Marcus looked around at the ship's interior with new understanding. "This whole ship is a work of art. All Drakmori technology is grown, not built," the commander explained. "We sing to the biometal, and it shapes itself to our needs. Each ship is unique, expressing the personality of its crew." "What happened?" Marcus asked. "How did you end up in the arenas?" The mood in the common area grew somber. Several of the rescued Drakmori moved closer, and Marcus realized this was a story they all needed to tell. 30 years ago, we encountered the Zephyrian Empire," the dark-scaled Drakmor began. "They seemed friendly, interested in cultural exchange. We shared our technology, our art, our knowledge freely. We were naive," the blue-silver one continued. "We believed that all intelligent species valued knowledge over profit. We were wrong. The Zephyrians studied us," the Emerald Leader said, his voice heavy with old pain. "They learned our biology, our psychology, our social structures, and then they decided we would make excellent entertainment. They attacked during the Festival of New Songs, the commander added. When our entire fleet was gathered for the cultural celebration, we never saw it coming. Marcus felt sick. They used your own openness against you. Many clans were captured, the Emerald leader confirmed. Separated, experimented upon, enhanced for combat effectiveness, made into weapons for alien amusement. But not all, Marcus said, gesturing toward the crew members. The outer clans escaped, the commander said with grim satisfaction. We have been hunting the capture ships ever since, freeing our people wherever we find them. And now? Marcus asked. Now we have all the captives from this facility, the blue-silver Drakmor said. 56 souls freed from slavery. But there are other facilities, the dark-scaled one added. Other worlds where our people are held. The hunt continues. Marcus considered this as he watched the stars wheel past the viewing ports. You're not just escaping. You're building a resistance. We are reclaiming our people, the Emerald leader corrected. Every clan member freed makes us stronger. Every facility we liberate sends a message. What message? Marcus asked. The commander's scales brightened, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. That the Drakmori will not be caged, that slavery ends now, that there are consequences for treating intelligent beings as property. Where will you go? Marcus wondered. Home, the Emerald leader said simply. To the free worlds beyond the Empire's reach, to rebuild what was taken from us. And you, small friend Marcus, the commander asked. What will you do? We can return you to your world if you wish. Marcus looked around at the magnificent beings who had accepted him as part of their pack. He thought about his quiet life in Colorado, his job at the rehabilitation center, his small apartment and routine existence. Then he thought about the 56 freed Drakmori aboard this ship, and all the others still trapped in facilities across the galaxy. How many more are there? He asked. How many more facilities like the one we just left? Intelligence suggests at least 12 major installations, the commander replied. Perhaps hundreds of our people still in captivity. Then I think, Marcus said slowly, that you could use someone who understands how to rehabilitate traumatized intelligent beings, someone who knows how to help former captives readjust to freedom. The Emerald leader's eyes widened. You would stay with us? Leave your own people to help ours? Pack protects pack, Marcus said, repeating the phrase he'd learned earlier. You made me part of your pack. That means I help free the rest of our family. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every Drakmor in the common area let out sounds of approval, a harmony of voices that spoke of acceptance and gratitude. Marcus felt tears in his eyes as he realized he'd just committed to the most important work of his life. Besides, he added with a grin, someone needs to teach your people the finer points of human stubbornness. If we're going to take on an empire, we'll need all the advantages we can get. The blue-silver Drakmor made the purring sound that Marcus had learned indicated amusement. Human stubbornness is indeed legendary throughout the galaxy. Good, Marcus said, settling back as the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel. Because I've got some ideas about how to turn this resistance into something the Zephyrian Empire will never forget. What kind of ideas? The commander asked, his interest clearly piqued. Well, Marcus said, looking around at his new family. On Earth we have a saying, the best way to defeat your enemy is to turn them into your friend. The Zephyrians think they understand predators and prey, but they've never encountered human-style pack bonding applied to galactic liberation. The Emerald leader tilted his massive head thoughtfully. Explain. Simple, Marcus replied. We don't just free your people. We free everyone. Every intelligent species they've enslaved. Every creature they've turned into entertainment. We build an alliance so large and so determined that slavery becomes impossible to maintain. The common area fell silent as the Drakmori considered this concept. A galactic liberation front, the commander said slowly, led by humans and Drakmori working together. Exactly, Marcus confirmed, because apparently the galaxy has never seen what happens when human empathy meets Drakmori patience and planning ability. The dark-scaled Drakmor made a sound that might have been laughter. The Zephyrians will not know what has happened to them. No, Marcus agreed, settling in for the journey to the free worlds. They really won't. As the ship carried them toward freedom and the beginning of their campaign against slavery, Marcus reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. Just hours ago, he'd been a simple animal rehabilitation specialist from Colorado. Now he was part of an interstellar liberation movement, traveling through space with some of the most magnificent beings he'd ever encountered. And somehow, it felt exactly right. "One more thing," he said to the Emerald leader. "I never asked your name." The great creature's eyes lit up with pleasure. "In your language, I am called Thunder that Walks Softly. My pack brothers are Wind Across Water," he indicated the blue-silver Drakmor, "and Shadow Who Remembers," indicating the dark-scaled one. "Beautiful names," Marcus said sincerely. "And you, Marcus of the Colorado Place," Thunder that Walks softly replied. "You shall be known among our people as Friend Who Listens, the first human to hear our true voices." "Friend Who Listens," Marcus repeated, liking the sound of it. "I think I can live with that." "Good," Wind Across Water said with obvious satisfaction, "because our people will want to hear the story of the small human who taught dragons how to be free." As the ship jumped through hyperspace toward their new life, Marcus couldn't help but smile. He'd always believed that the most dangerous-looking creatures were often the most misunderstood. He'd just never imagined that principle would lead him to become a galactic revolutionary. But then again, life with the Drakmori was probably going to be full of surprises.